everyone, and welcome to our October edition of Facebook Live here in the Texas Christian University Office of Admission. My name is Heath Einstein. I have the great pleasure of serving TCU as Dean of Admission, and we are so happy that you are with us tonight. And I am joined by a very special guest, and I'd like this special guest to introduce himself right now. Hey, Dalton.
Hey, thanks a ton. So hi, everybody. My name is Dalton Goodier. I am our assistant director for first year admission. So that means that I'm one of those admission counselors who is part of our first year team, going out on the road and meeting y'all, reading applications, and just helping y'all to navigate this college process. So real excited to be here today, spending some time answering some of your questions.
And it's such a pleasure to be welcoming people from all over the world with us right now. So wherever you are, maybe evening, maybe morning, welcome to our Facebook Live. We've got Angie from Fayetteville, Arkansas. We've got Crystal from right here in Texas. We've got Hector from Hawaii. We've got Stephanie joining us from Hong Kong. And I love this because it really reflects the geographic diversity that you see on our campus. We always start all of our programs with a land acknowledgement. Where we are located at TCU is a very special place physically, and we respectfully acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. We especially acknowledge and pay respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose historical homeland our university is located. The next time you're on campus, I would encourage you to go see the monument between Reed Hall and Jarvis Hall that commemorates the Wichita and affiliated tribes. And it is of particular importance right now. As you probably know, Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day. And last Monday, on the 3rd of October, we had our 6th annual Native American and Indigenous Peoples Day Symposium, which is always a really interesting event. Now, there is a lot going on our campus right now. We've got a couple of major concerts that are coming up. It was just announced within the last couple of hours that Kesha will be performing at TCU next Tuesday. Ludacris will be here just 3 days after that, next Friday. And these are events that are open to all of our students, and you don't have to pay anything extra than what you're already paying to come to TCU. Your student ID gets you into all of these activities. It also gets you into all of our home athletic events, and there is a lot going on athletically right now. You may be aware that our Horned Frog football team is currently ranked 13th in the country. We are undefeated, 5-0. We host undefeated Oklahoma State on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central. Everyone's very excited about that. Worth noting, however, that there is so much more athletically going on at TCU than just football. Our rifle team is number 1 in the country. Our equestrian team is number 1. Our women's soccer team is number 10. So there's a lot of excitement on our campus. Right now, this evening, we're here to talk about application tips and tricks because, well, it is application season. Whether you are a prospective first-year student or a prospective transfer student, you may be in the process of applying right now. For first-year students, our deadlines are coming up. Our first deadline is coming up. We have November 1st, which is just about 3 weeks from now. And on that day, we have both early decision and early action. Early decision is the binding application. That's where you say, TCU is my number 1 choice, and if admitted, I definitely plan to attend. Early action is non-binding. It means we're still going to give you a decision ahead of time, but you still have until May 1st, which is the national candidate reply date, to decide whether or not you want to come to TCU. There's a second deadline for our first-year students, and that is February 1st, and that is for our second round of early decision, which again is binding, or regular decision. So sometimes students aren't sure whether they want to apply to TCU until after that November 1 deadline, and so you still have until February 1st to determine whether TCU is where you'd like to be. Dalton, before we really get into sort of the nuts and bolts of everything, I was just curious, as a counselor who's now been doing this for a number of years, and you've read literally thousands of applications, what are 1 or 2 pieces of advice you might give to people as they're finalizing their application?
Yeah, thanks, Heath. So honestly, I would say the biggest piece of advice that I can give to y'all as high school seniors, and also to y'all who are juniors and below as well, is just to take a deep breath. I know that this is, or it can be, a really stressful process. This is one of the biggest decisions that you've made in your life up until this point. So it's a very exciting time as well. But we do know that it can be stressful. And so the biggest thing is just to know that it's really your hard work over the past few years and throughout your entire life that has gotten you to this point. And so although we are looking at that application and wanting to see all those things, you've already put in the effort to be that awesome person, that great student that we are looking for. Beyond that, I would also say to feel free to reach out and develop that relationship with your admission counselor. We want to see you be admitted. We want to see you get as much scholarship money as possible. We work in admissions and not in denies over here. So we're definitely on your side and here to support you. And so if you haven't yet, feel free to reach out to us. We're not scary, intimidating people. I hope you're able to see that through these different events that we do. But we really want to be there to support you. And so just reaching out to us can enable us to do that.
You mentioned that we love to admit and not deny, and I want to put some numbers behind that. And so we're going to put some graphics up here in a minute. I do want to mention we want to take as many of your questions as possible. So please feel free right now to go ahead and enter those into the chat, and we will get to as many as we can over the course of the next 50 plus minutes until the end of the hour. So last year, when students applied for first year and transfer admission for the fall 22 entering class, we had over 16,000 students apply for first year admission, and we had almost 950 students apply for transfer admission. It's a lot of applications for our team to review, but we do it with love. We take a lot of time to get to know students through this process. We have a large staff, and so there are multiple people who will be reviewing your application, and we talk about them. And so one of the questions we always get is, okay, well, is there some threshold that if I don't meet, I'm automatically going to be in the no pile? And the answer is no. Every student's application is honored with a complete review. We want to make sure that we're doing you justice in this process. We know how much of your heart you put into it, and we want to honor that by doing just the same thing. So I showed you the numbers of people who applied. In terms of who's admitted, to Dalton's point before, we actually admit a fairly high percentage of students who submit applications for admission. 56% of students who apply for first year admission, so students who are coming from high school and starting that next year at university, will be admitted. And on the transfer side, it's even higher. 81% of students who applied as a transfer to TCU end up being admitted. So we really do love admitting students. I like to say that TCU is a selective but accessible institution. We're not one of those places where we're admitting only 5% of the students who apply. There are schools out there like that. Frankly, I don't think that would be a lot of fun for us to work at a school like that. That seems like super stressful to me, and just no fun saying no all the time. We get to say yes a lot of the time. Students are always asking questions about the role that standardized tests play. And this has become, I think, even murkier in recent years with the adoption of test optional at universities across the country. A policy that was really hastened by the coronavirus. At TCU, 25% of first-year admitted students who were awarded scholarships use test scores. What that means is there were a lot of students out there who got academic scholarships where test scores weren't even considered. So not only are students getting into the university who don't submit test scores, but there's even scholarship money available to students. There's another element of the application that I find myself talking to students about with some frequency. Dalton, I'm sure you do too, and that's something that we call the freedom of expression. At TCU, we have this optional component to our application called the freedom of expression, and that is where students can submit something else to us that they would like. It could be anything that they want. And some students feel like, well, if it's optional, doesn't that mean I should be submitting it? And much like the test scores, the answer is no. It really is up to you. It is your option. And in fact, only 7% of students who are admitted to TCU have submitted a freedom of expression. I'm always surprised when I read that stat because I feel like I see a lot of freedoms of expression, but in fact, it's a pretty small number. And so if you feel like as an applicant, there is more to who you are than what the traditional college application would allow you to show, then you might consider submitting some additional documentation in the form of a freedom of expression. For some students, that is some artwork. For other students, it may be some original musical composition. But whatever it is that you think captures who you are in a way that the application doesn't, you are certainly welcome to submit. Okay, let's get to some questions people are already asking. And again, continue to ask away. Throw those questions in the chat. We want to be as helpful and resourceful as we possibly can be. So Dalton, the first question, Jenny is asking, Stacy is asking, can you change an early action application once you are deferred to an early decision? So first, maybe you can explain the deferral process.
Mhm.
What are the potential outcomes for a student who applies to early action, and then what can they do once they are deferred?
Yeah, so we will choose to defer a number of our early action applications, and essentially what that means for us is we are saying we like what we see so far. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but we would like to see your fall grades, and for you basically just to reaffirm your interest in TCU. We do this as kind of that mid-sized school because we want to make sure that we are honoring the students who might not have heard about TCU until a little bit later in the process. So we want to make sure that we're able to kind of read those applications the same for our early action and regular decision students. If your application is deferred to TCU, then you will have an opportunity at that time to change your application to that early decision to deadline. So this is a great option if you are deferred, but during that time, you're thinking to yourself, you know what, like I've really solidified my choice here. TCU is absolutely where I want to be. So if something changes on your end and you do make that decision, we will allow you to change that over. Once you finish applying to TCU and you actually submit your application, we will email you and get you set up with your my.tcu portal. This is going to be the place where you are able to view your admission decision, upload additional documents. Once you actually come to TCU, it's kind of where all your courses and everything else that you need as a student will be. So there is a space on there where you can go and you can change your application deadline. In that same space, you can also request to change your major after you've applied as well. So that's an option for once you have, if you do get that deferral, you can go in there. It's also a great opportunity to talk to your admission counselor. If you're kind of thinking about that still, reach out to us and we're happy to kind of navigate that question with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dalton. Okay. Colin asks, what percent of the freshman class is admitted through ED? And by ED, Colin means early decision. We have, as I mentioned, 2 rounds of early decision. We just adopted last year early decision round 2. Prior to that, we only had 1 round. And the reason why we added a second round is because there are some students, again, who don't find out about TCU until a little bit later in the process. And then we emerge as the top choice, and they want to be able to signify that to us or signal that to us. There's a second really practical reason for having a second round of early decision, and that is we might be a student's number 2 choice, and they might apply early decision somewhere else in round 1 and not get admitted. And then we become the number 1 school, and we still want to give those students a chance to declare TCU as the top choice. So that's why we have the second round. Now, to answer the question, what percent of the freshman class is admitted? We typically, up to last year, would cap out at around 20%, usually a little bit lower than that. With this current first-year class at TCU, since we added that second round, we're a little bit closer to 25%. So about a quarter of the students are coming in through one of those 2 early decision rounds. That still leaves 75% of the class through the non-ED rounds, be that either early action or regular decision. And I want to put some, I want to help the thinking behind this from your perspective. It doesn't mean that 75% of all admitted students come from one of those other rounds, because a student who is admitted early decision is obligated to enroll, right? So for every offer of admission we make early decision, we will have one student enroll. With other rounds, there are going to be students who are offered admission but choose to go elsewhere. In other words, in order to get that 75% of the first year class, we actually have to give away a lot more spaces, because there are going to be students who end up going to other schools. So that's my way of telling you there is a lot of room for students to be admitted who don't apply early decision. And you should only apply to TCU, or any school for that matter, under an early decision plan if you know that's exactly where you want to be. So thank you for that question, Colin. And then there's another question related to early decision. Mio asks, and Dalton, I'll pose this to you: do early decision students have access to scholarships?
Yes. So our scholarship process is automatic. So when you apply to TCU, you're automatically throwing your hat in the ring for those scholarships. The process that we use to determine those scholarships is going to be the same as well. So I know there's another question about are you kind of limited on that? So we do not want to disincentivize you to apply early decision. It would not be very ethical on our part to say, oh, well, you're guaranteed to come here anyways, so let's give you less scholarship money than what you've earned. So because of that, we will keep that same process, and you're going to be eligible for all of the scholarships, all of that financial aid. When you get your decision back from TCU, that's when you'll hear back on any academic scholarships that you might have received.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. Missy asks, when will we hear about early decision acceptances for that November 1 deadline? Missy, we will notify students who apply early, whether that's early decision or early action, sometime before January 1st. That is what we put in all of our publications. In reality, it's going to be much earlier than that. So for early decision, typically it's the first week of December. And for early action, usually it's somewhere in the middle of December. And we do that. The reason why we say January 1st is because in case we have something go haywire, there's a technical glitch, or we have an influx of applications that we didn't anticipate, then we want to be able to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility. But every year that we've had early decision, we've been able to get those decisions out quite early. And so you can anticipate, if you've applied early decision, that you'll hear back from us in, about 7 weeks, which is hard for us to wrap our brains around, because we're still out on the road recruiting students right now. In fact, if you came to the Office of Admission today, there'd be, I would say, less than half of our counseling staff is in the office right now. We're having fun getting out there and meeting you. Okay, keep those questions rolling in. Y'all are doing a great job. So let me ask the next question. Megan asks, Dalton, I'm going to throw this to you. If applying to a direct school, for example, nursing, and you're denied or deferred, is there a way to indicate that you would still want to attend TCU for a different major?
Yes. So during that deferral process, then we'll be able to kind of have that conversation and have that talk with you on what else you might be looking for or might be interested in. So nursing is really kind of the only direct admit program that's going to be like this at TCU. The other option that we have for some of our fine arts, you might be looking for a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and that has an audition process attached to it. If you are admitted to TCU academically, but not necessarily into that program, we do also have a number of students who will go into those just under the Bachelor of Arts, and they have the opportunity to kind of pursue that through that avenue as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dalton. And I would say specifically that is because, Megan, you asked about denied or deferred. We're talking about the students who were deferred. If you're denied admission, it means we've looked at you overall to the university and just feel like it's probably not going to be the best match. And we want you to be able to pursue another institution at that point. Okay, Michaela asks, This is a great question, Dalton. I'm sure you get this all the time. I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to answer it too, just to see if we have different responses. What do you look for the most in the application from students?
Ooh, so one, I would say the most important thing for y'all to know is that we are utilizing that holistic review. So like Heath mentioned earlier, there's not a formula that says if you've got these grades and test scores, you're automatically in. So that means that we're also looking at things in context as well. So we want to know who you are as a full person. That said, I would say the single most important individual factor is going to be your transcript. So specifically the classes that you take and the grades you make. More important than your test scores or your rank or your resume or anything else like that. At TCU, we believe that if you're taking those challenging college prep level classes, whether that's AP, IB, dual credit, UT on-ramps, anything like that, and you're making solid grades, you're going to make good grades when you actually get to college. So truly, all of it does matter to us. But we know that kind of the biggest indicator is how you're doing in school on a daily basis. And that's really going to predict, how successful you'll be here at TCU.
Awesome answer. That's what I would have said too. I'll add one other thing to that. So yes, and we have a lot of students who apply who can do the work, who academically have demonstrated throughout the course of high school that they're qualified to achieve at a high level at TCU. So then I think the other piece to the puzzle that really can help students stand out is demonstration of commitment to something beyond yourself. TCU, if you've spent any time on our campus, has very much this family feel. People love being part of the community. And so we want to continue to enroll students who have that same sort of vision for what college should look like for them and how they anticipate contributing to the community. That doesn't mean that we expect everybody to have performed 100 hours of community service. So when I say commitment to community, I mean that in a really broad way. And there's no sort of magic formula for what that looks like. For some students, it will be community service. For other students, it's being really actively involved in clubs or organizations. For other students, it's going to be an athlete on multiple teams. For some students, it's going to be conducting research. So there are many forms it could take. But what we just don't want to see is students who have gone to class and then come home and played video games all day. We want to see people who are really serious about being part of a community. It's part of what makes TCU so special, and it's how we're able to keep that going year after year after year. So thank you, Michaela, for that excellent question. Okay. Let's see. Tiffany asks, are there certain days when application fees are waived? And the answer is yes, every day. Application fees are waived automatically for first generation students. We waive the app fee automatically for students who are veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. That happens automatically. And so when you fill out your application, when you go to pay the application fee, there'll be some questions there. And also, if the application fee is a barrier to entry for you, if that $50 fee is going to be the difference between you applying to TCU and not applying to TCU, then go ahead and just don't pay the fee. We don't want that to be the reason why. So you can contact our office. We will grant you a fee waiver. We very much want to see your application. So thanks, Tiffany, for that wonderful question. Okay, let's see. Aiden asks, are the admission requirements different for the early admission master's program, specifically the 3-2 movement science program? I am so excited that you've asked this question, Aiden, because this is the first year that we're offering these early admission master's programs. We actually have 5 of them. 2 of them are in the Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences. They are the movement science / athletic training program. We also have a combined program for social work. 2 are in the College of Education. And then the last one is our really exciting data analytics program in the Neely School of Business. With the first 4 programs I mentioned, the 2 in Harris College and the 2 in education, you would have to major in those areas as undergrads, or in the case of education, something close to that, like math or something like that, where you would be going on to a career in teaching. With the data analytics, you can major in anything at the university. So when you apply for admission to TCU, and once you submit the application, we will send you credentials to log into the student portal, the MyTCU student portal. When you do that, you'll be presented immediately with a checklist so you can identify what parts of the application and supporting credentials have arrived and what haven't. So you can stay on top of that. Under that, you're going to see links to a couple of optional forms, one of which is the application to the John V. Roach Honors College, and the other is an application to the Early Admission Master's Program. And so if you are interested, then we would strongly encourage you to apply to that. It's a very simple application process. And I would say, generally speaking, no, the requirements are not different. What would be admissible to the university as an incoming first-year student are the same kinds of things we're looking for that would help us understand, is this something that you might want to pursue at the graduate level? So that's very exciting. If you're admitted to that program, you will not find out about that until after you're admitted to the university. So let's say you apply early action to TCU, and then we admit you to the university. You'll find that out, again, as I mentioned earlier, sometime in mid-December. The notification for the early admission master's program will come out at some point in late January. So after we've had a chance to evaluate your application once again, that's when you would hear about that. Okay, great question, Aiden. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to pause here for a minute. We're gonna take a dad joke. This has become a tradition with our Facebook Live. So Dalton, you're on the hot seat. I'm going to throw this dad joke at you. If you don't know it, that's okay. But here we go. Okay, what happens when doctors get frustrated? What happens when doctors get frustrated?
You know, Heath, I'm not a dad, so I don't have a clue.
Okay, so that's okay. When doctors get frustrated, they lose their patience.
All right, Heath.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. William asks, getting back to our questions now, and please feel free to throw more questions in there. We're loving them. What does the out-of-state acceptance rate look like? So Dalton, can you talk about TCU, private school, in-state, out-of-state, all that stuff?
Yeah, so as a private school, we are actually not looking at anything differently for you as an out-of-state student. So about half of our student body does come from Texas. About half comes from elsewhere. Oh, look at that. There you go. So yeah, because of that, we really are looking at those very similarly. The process for scholarships and for financial aid will also be exactly the same. So nothing's going to be different depending on where you apply to us from.
Excellent. Thank you, Dalton. Appreciate that answer. Okay. So I'm going to pose this question to you, Dalton, that Pierce asks, because I'm going to give you the hard questions. I'll take the easy one. Pierce asks, I applied early decision in September. What are the other ways I can show demonstrated interest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question, by the way. For those of y'all who might not be familiar with this term, demonstrated interest is basically just, it's pretty obvious, but it's how much interest in that particular school or institution that you have shown. And this can be from developing a relationship with your admission counselor, visiting campus, attending a college fair or a high school visit, and taking that time to talk to us. Different schools do value that demonstrated interest differently. For us, it can make a little bit of a difference, like really on the margins. So if we have a student who is just really borderline and we are like really having a hard time making that decision, if we go through and you have emailed your counselor 5 times already and you have visited campus and done all these things, then we're going to say, yes, this is a student that we really want. Knowing that, I also would caution you to not make demonstrated interest the be-all, end-all. We know that you are really busy. We want you to enjoy just being a high school senior. So yes, like email your counselors, visit the schools that's really important to you, do all of those things. But don't feel like you have to like visit TCU 3 different times and buy yourself another plane ticket to come back here again. You don't have to email your counselor like every single day, good morning, Dalton. Hope it's a great day for you. So do what makes sense for you in your college search. And that demonstrated interest will come naturally. I would not tell you to do things just because you think that TCU wants to see them. Now, I know this question was specifically for our early decision students. By applying early decision, you have already like maxed out your interest in TCU. I mean, you saying, hey, if you admit me here, I am 100% coming. It's pretty difficult to show that you're more interested than that. So for our early decision students, like truly don't worry about it, but definitely do still like develop those relationships, visit the schools that are important to you, and just get the information that you need for your own sake and not for us.
That's a great, thorough answer, Dalton. I really appreciate that. Demonstrated interest has become sort of a buzzword at selective colleges, and like you were saying, for us, it's maybe a factor on the margins, but really, we're gonna reward the students who've done really well in the classroom. And I have the philosophy that if a student has earned admission through their work over the course of 4 years of high school, then it's our job to then convince them to come to TCU. And whether that happens before or after the application process, so be it. I think the onus is really on us. Okay, Zach asks, when do most transfer students hear about admission for spring? And the answer is we have just started to roll those decisions out. We will batch transfer decisions out every few weeks. We started last week with our first round of transfer applications for the spring. We usually have somewhere between 100 and 125 students who start in the spring semester as transfer students. So you definitely won't be alone. It's a pretty big cohort. And those decisions roll out again every few weeks. So we try to, when possible, give decisions within about 4 weeks of a student submitting an application. Now, it's sometimes a little bit trickier in the spring, or I should say in the fall for spring semester admission, because we have a lot of students who are applying as students who are in their first semester of college. And therefore, we don't actually have any grades to go by until the end of the first semester. So there are a lot of students who will apply now, but they're not going to hear back from us until December, once the final grades from wherever they're attending right now are entered into the system. And it's a very quick turnaround between the end of the fall semester and the beginning of the spring semester. So it will require on the part of families a little bit of flexibility and understanding, not knowing necessarily what the housing situation is going to be like, because we don't know exactly how many spaces on campus are open until we get right to the beginning of the spring semester, because some students will have graduated, some students may be going away to study abroad for the spring semester. We might have some students who choose not to return, and we wouldn't know that necessarily until maybe the week before classes start. So there is some flexibility that's required. But all that to say, we do enroll a lot of transfer students each spring, and we're excited that you submitted an application, Zach. So thanks very much. Okay, Dalton, Sheridan asks, is there a separate application process for the Neely School of Business?
There is not. So we have, in terms of additional things that will be a part of the application, we do have for our nursing students, there's a short supplement. We'll do the same thing for students who are applying into the honors college. And then we do also have those auditions for our fine arts students. Other than that, you are going to be applying to TCU with just kind of that normal, application process. Nothing else will be kind of out of the ordinary. Are there any majors that I forgot that also will have any kind of supplements or anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. So for business, even though the academic process, once you're here with our pre-business and everything, looks a little different, there's not going to be anything that you need to do like right now as a high school senior.
Yeah. That actually does remind me, Dalton, that with our nursing students, because you mentioned there's that supplement for nursing, that on the first year side, on the transfer side, we actually have two different application platforms that are available to our transfer students. One is for specifically for nursing. It's something called Nursing CAS, which is a centralized nursing application system. Meaning, when I say centralized, I mean outside of TCU. So it's a service that we use. Any transfer nursing student will use that application, then that gets fed to us. All other applicants to TCU from the transfer side who are non-nursing majors will just use the TCU application that's found on our website. For first year students, there are 4 different application platforms. We have our own application that, again, found on our website. There is the common application, which is accepted by almost 1,000 colleges, or roughly 1,000 colleges across the country, and even some outside the US. There is the Coalition for College application, and then there is Apply Texas. And Apply Texas and Coalition and Common, they're all very similar in structure, meaning you fill out one form, but you send it to any school that subscribes to that application that you would like. So in the case of Apply Texas, for example, every college in the state of Texas, with the exception of one, I think, uses Apply Texas. So it doesn't matter to us which of those 4 application types you choose. Whatever is going to allow you to put your best foot forward, that's what we want to see. So, I mean, there are some people who think, well, doesn't TCU want to see its own application? And the answer is we want to see your best work. So if your best work is going to be on Coalition or Common or Apply Texas, by all means, you should use that. Okay, Christy asks, what are good qualities to have in the John V. Roach Honors College supplemental essay? So as I mentioned earlier, when you apply to the university and you go on to into the student portal, from there you can apply to the Honors College. And by the way, that Honors College deadline is going to be 2 weeks after the application deadline for admission. So if you're applying early decision or early action, which has a November 1 deadline, the Honors College app will be due on November 15th. If you're applying regular decision or early decision round 2, which has a February 1st deadline, the Honors College application for those rounds will be February 15th. What it is that we're looking for is really strong essay writing. Because and I should say that when we review Honors College applications, the we is our Honors College faculty. They are the ones who are going in, and what they're looking for is a demonstration that you can write well and that you have a real thirst for knowledge. It's not just who has the best grades or test scores if you submit test scores, because as we all know, at TCU, test scores are optional. It's not about the numbers, it's about the passion. That's what makes the Honors College special. It's what makes the experience in the classroom special. It's a residential experience as well. So I always say that if you're the kind of person who finds yourself going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole at like 2 a.m. Because you just love knowledge, then the Honors College could be a great fit for you. If, on the other hand, you're the kind of student who gets straight A's, but you're doing that because you just like to check the box that says you get straight A's, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not really what the Honors College is looking for. Okay. Dalton, Georgia asks, does TCU allow students to submit a resume?
Yes. So we want to see all of the activities and things that you are engaged and involved in, and we're going to get that on your application. So each of those different application types has some space where you can do that. It might be called like the activities list or something where you just can list those things. So the application has a specific space where you can do that. If you have your own resume you'd like to submit to us, to take the place of that, we're more than happy to accept that as well. So if you have a resume already that you've made for a class or for other schools or for a job, and you think that that does a better job of just showing off kind of like what you've been involved in and what leadership roles you've taken, then we're happy to take that. So as with many parts of the application, really do what is going to work well for you. The important thing for us is the information itself, not the way that it's presented. So whether you do an official resume, you do the activities list on your application, it's the things themselves that we really want to see.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Yun Feng asks, what should students do to show their strength when GPA is a little bit low? And that's a really good question, Yun Feng. I think that um, one of the things that Dalton talked about earlier was the holistic nature of our evaluation. And so when a student has a GPA that's a little bit sub profile for us, we're going to really dig in to see what the strength of your curriculum looked like. We're also going to try to understand your story because there are lots of reasons why a GPA could be low. Not all GPAs are created equally. If you have a 3.5 GPA and and I have a 3.5 GPA, it's possible that you started at a 3.0 and worked your way up. That's a much different story from my 3.5, which started as a 4.0 and has worked its way down. Um, and and if you started at a lower point but are increasingly getting better over time, then there may be reasons for that. Maybe you had a learning difference that was recently diagnosed. Maybe you had a death in the family that occurred um, right in finals one semester. Maybe there was a global pandemic. So there are lots of different reasons why a student could have a lower GPA. What I would say is these are things that we want to understand. So if you believe that your GPA is lower than what it should be or what our profile is, it would help to have an explanation for that. The applications typically will give you some space for additional information. Also, this is typically what a school counselor will write about. It's why we require students to submit letters of recommendation, one from a teacher and one from a counselor. A teacher is going to tell us what you're like in the classroom, and the counselor is going to provide sort of the overall picture of the student and how they fit into the school environment and what their overall academic performance has been. And that is a great space also for us to get to know your story a little bit better. So thanks for that question. It's a really good one. Okay. Dalton, Leo asks, can you be deferred from ED or are you only denied or accepted at that time?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So when you apply early decision, it's really important to us that we're able to make a decision kind of right then and there. A big reason for that is you've already kind of like made that commitment to us on your end, and so we want you to kind of know as soon as possible. For a student to apply early decision and put kind of all their eggs in that basket, and then for us to come back and say, oh, now we're asking to wait a few more months, can sometimes throw some students off. The other big thing is that when we're reading those applications for early decision, because we're already kind of giving you a little bit of a boost in the application by applying for that, we're kind of looking at those just a little bit differently. So if a student isn't admitted to early decision, then that decision is going to be final. And so I would still encourage you to apply early decision over early action if you're thinking about that. Typically, the type of student that we would look really hard at deferring otherwise is usually the type of student that we want to try and admit as an early decision student if possible.
Excellent. Thanks, Dalton. Okay. Craig asks, is there any consideration for an applicant who has siblings at TCU and is a child of an alum? And Craig, what you're describing is legacy admission. And I would say that at TCU, that would be given very light consideration. It would be similar to a demonstration of interest. That's kind of how we look at it. It's one of those things that, again, if you're sort of, we're splitting hairs. It's the 11th hour. We've got like just those final 2 spots, and then we could consider it. But ultimately, what we're looking for is for students to be admitted on the basis of the work that they've put in, and not the work that a parent, a sibling, or a grandparent has put in. It's what allows us to help increasingly level the playing field for students who may not have had those same advantages going through their educational system. So I would say light consideration. Okay, Dalton, I'm going to pose this question to you, and that is, Georgia asks, does TCU allow students to submit a resume?
Oh, yeah, that's the one that we talked about earlier.
I apologize.
Yeah,
we did do
can,
that. Sorry.
not required.
Okay, Great. Yeah. Thank you for keeping me on track. Okay. Because we have so many questions that have come in. I'm trying to get to
It's crazy
everybody.
to see how many are popping through. It's pretty wild.
I know, it's pretty cool. Very, very cool. Okay. Let's see. Amanda asks, if you do not submit an SAT or ACT score, can you still win TCU scholarships? Are you judged the same as those who do submit scores? So I know we mentioned at the very outset, and Amanda probably wasn't with us, we gave some percentages, but can you talk us through that sort of do no harm policy that we have at TCU?
Yeah, for sure. So we essentially have two scholarship formulas. All of our scholarships are based off of your academic credentials. So no matter what, we're going to be looking at your grades. We're going to be looking at the strength of curriculum. So that's that number of AP, IB, dual credit classes that you've taken. If you submit that test score, we will add your test scores to that scholarship formula. And again, if not, then it's simply one less data point that we will have. But we do have what Heath just called our do no harm policy. Basically, what that means is that for scholarships, your test scores can help you. They cannot hurt you. So we'll run you through that formula twice. If you are in this scholarship with your test scores and this scholarship without them, this is going to be the one that we will award you. So again, they can help. They will never be used against you. But we are just basically looking at all the academic information that you choose to provide us for that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Chris asks, may a student transfer from a non-nursing major to nursing after freshman year? So first of all, Dalton, have I asked that question before?
Have you have not.
Okay, good. Yep. Okay, so the answer is yes, but this is an important caveat. A student may apply to transfer into nursing after their first year, but nursing is a 4-year program. It's a lockstep program. So if you don't start in nursing at TCU on day one, then you are not going to be able to graduate in 4 years. And that is why we don't encourage students to try to sort of backdoor into nursing, because that's a common question. People know that it's harder to get into the program. It is our most competitive major. And so they say, well, maybe I'll just start as something else and then I'll apply to transfer. You can do that, but it's going to necessarily lengthen the time at the university. That actually flows kind of nicely into the next question, which I'll pose to you, Dalton, and that's from Annabelle. And it's, when do you declare your major? And is it possible to switch between schools within TCU once you're there?
Yeah, so when you apply to TCU, that is when you will select your major. So you're applying under that one single major that we have. And then when you actually attend your academic orientation over the summer before your first year, that's when you'll have that opportunity to add a minor or a second major, anything along those lines. More than half of our students do double major. Also, more than half of our students will change their majors at least once. So it is very possible to change your mind, to add a second major, anything along those lines. We do set up all of our different majors and minors in these different colleges and schools, but those are set up just as the way that we organize all of those. They're not barriers. So if you are looking to change majors from one college on campus to another, then that's definitely feasible. It's absolutely possible. You will have an academic advisor that you'll receive as you're entering into that first year class, and there'll be a person you can talk to if you do decide that you need to change your mind on anything.
Great. Dalton, it's time for another dad joke. And I know you've been waiting with bated breath for this, so let's get right to it. Dalton, what kind of music scares balloons? What kind of music scares balloons?
I'm drawing a complete blank here.
Think genre. What genre of music scares balloons?
Oh. Well, now I'm just thinking of that 99 Left Balloons song.
Oh, that's a great song. Being a child of the 80s, I really appreciate you saying that.
I knew you'd like that.
Okay. It's in that vein. It's pop music. Pop music scares balloons. Okay.
I need everyone on the Facebook Live to know that in the office, Heath is really funny. So
that's true. And I don't have dad jokes in the office. It's just on Facebook Live. Okay, good. John Paul asks, does TCU value Christian values, and is it open-minded to other religions? I really appreciate that question, John Paul. And I think to understand religious life, spirituality at TCU requires some understanding of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, which is the Protestant denomination under which TCU was established way back in 1873. We were founded by two ministers of the DOC, Addison and Randolph Clark. And what the DOC believes is this idea of faith with reason. That is, you don't accept ideas at face value, but only through really deep exploration do we come to some greater understanding of the world around us. And it's an ecumenical faith, meaning that it doesn't believe that there's only one right path. And so while I think TCU does hold very strong disciples' values, that also means part of that value means being an open space for students and community members of many different religions. And for that reason, we have dozens of different faith communities represented on our campus. I would say to you, John Paul, that if you're a person for whom faith is really important, you're going to find lots of fellowship at TCU. You will find people who share your values. You're going to have opportunities for missionary work if that's important to you. We have a very strong Young Life community on our campus as well. If you're a person for whom faith is not that important, that's okay too. First of all, we have an Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, and their whole mission is to help students along their spiritual journey. But also, you're not required to pick a faith to be part of TCU. There's no statement of faith required. What we do require of students is that they are respectful of people who come from any religious background. And we require that students take a class in a religious tradition. That is part of the core curriculum at TCU. Every student must do that. So thank you for that question. It's a really, really important one. Okay, Dalton, Aiden asks, does the number of applicants applying from the same high school or the same state affect the consideration of one's application from that high school or state?
Yeah, really good question. The short answer is no, not really. We are looking at you as an individual with your own specific set of talents and abilities and what you have accomplished so far. I will say that in our admission process, we are very data informed. So what that can mean for us when we're looking at specific schools and things of that nature is we can look at that and have a good idea of kind of like historical cutoffs of where students have been admitted and then been successful while they're here. We're able to look at a lot of that historical data as we're kind of going through that. So we have a lot of that information that we like to use. As an example, I know that there are a couple of schools that I work with where like the transcripts come in and it looks like the rigor just isn't there. But I know that this is like a really competitive high school where all classes are taught at this really high level. So I just have that additional context. I think this is a nice thing about us being a smaller school where we get to really know the counselors and the students in the schools that we work with. So we do understand the context there, but you're not like competing with other of your classmates for specific spots on campus.
Excellent. Thank you. Whitney asks, are there scholarships beyond need or academic? That's a great question. And the answer is there are. There are talent scholarships that are available at TCU. So if a student is particularly talented in one of the areas of the performing arts, we have money available for those students. We also have money available for students who are members of the marching band. We have a $3,000 stipend that we give. And so I always tell students, if you have played a marching band instrument in high school and would like to earn money at TCU, you should continue it in college. If you have not played a marching band instrument in high school, now is a very good time to learn because there's money available to you. And of course, we have, being a Division I school in NCAA athletics, there are athletic scholarships available to students as well. And sort of a little known fact is that though we are the smallest school by population in the Big 12 conference, we actually have the most number of sports in the Big 12 conference. So athletics plays a pretty big role on our campus. Okay, Dalton. Crystal asks, our son has already applied early action, but learned last night that he was voted senior class president. Congratulations. Is there a way to add that to his application? And also he received the National Recognition Award for Rural and Small Town from the College Board. Does TCU acknowledge that with any scholarships? So Crystal, awesome. Congratulations on all of that. Dalton, how would you respond to those questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first off, you are always welcome to add anything new that you would like to your application. So if there is something else that you want to add on there, whether it's something on your resume, new grades, you get a new test score in, yeah, we're happy to take those. So you can just shoot an email to your counselor, and then they'll be able to integrate that into your file. You can also, if you have like an updated resume or something like that, you can email frogmail@tcu.edu, and then from there we're able to kind of add those in. As far as those different College Board recognitions go, we do have additional scholarships available for students who are national merit, as well as Hispanic national merit. I'm going to be totally honest, the national recognition for rural and small town isn't something that I'm super familiar with. I think it's awesome that they have that. Heath, do you know anything additional about that?
No, that's new. That's new to me. I don't know if it's a new initiative by College Board, or we just haven't seen it before. I haven't seen it before, but no, that's news to me too.
Yeah, thanks for stumping us, Crystal.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that though. Okay, let's see. Amy asks, when does a joke become a dad joke? Okay, so there are 3 elements to a dad joke as far as I'm concerned, Amy. One is it has to be a pun. 2, it has to be super cheesy. And 3, it has to be something that a little kid could get. So sorry, Dalton, but you're not my kid, so it doesn't matter.
I got admitted to TCU, so
that's true. That's true. It has to be sort of on a kid level. See, you're too advanced. That's the problem. You're not thinking on a 9-year-old level. Okay, so those are the 3 elements of a dad joke. Thanks for asking that question, Amy. Dalton, Emily asks, how impactful is the writing to admissions compared to GPA and extracurriculars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first, I need to give Amy her props because she came back with the actual answer, which is it becomes a dad joke when it becomes apparent.
Very good. Yeah.
I'm glad you could finally be on the receiving end of one of those. So like I said earlier, your GPA and your curriculum is going to be the biggest thing. Beyond that, I would say that the impact of everything else is going to really depend on what your application looks like. So for some students, they have this incredibly compelling story. Like maybe their grades are a little bit lower, or maybe like we don't see a ton on like the resume, but we read that essay and it's like, oh wow, we have to have this student at TCU. All of a sudden for that student, like their essay carries a decent amount of weight. Another student might not have a really impactful essay. It's a little more generic. Maybe they are just writing about like something that they're involved in, and we kind of see that on their resume already. So in that case, like it's helpful. We're not going to penalize the student, but we're just not going to value that quite as much. Same thing with, for example, like your recommendation letters. You might have like a teacher that you know really, really well who just like really goes to bat for you. In that case, then that might have more of an impact. If you go to like a really ginormous school where like you don't even know your counselor and they're kind of like filling out those evaluations as quickly as they can, then same thing. Like we're not going to penalize you for not having this, like 3-page letter of recommendation. And so it's really going to depend. The most important part is the academics. Beyond that, whatever you send to us and how kind of important it looks like that has been to your development in high school, then we can kind of look at that and use that in that way.
Okay, Dalton, the hour has flown by. Can you believe we've come to the end of our Facebook Live session? Amazing. Thank you. You did an amazing job. Much appreciated. I also want to thank a couple of folks who are working tirelessly behind the scenes right now. Amy Peterson from TCU's Marketing and Communication Division, Rob Berline from Office of Alumni Relations, and Jenny Moore from the Office of Admission. Thanks to the 3 of you for making this all happen. Thanks to all of you for joining us, especially to Amy for the win. That was such an awesome joke that I totally missed. So I'm going to have to send you something. Email me, h.einstein@tcu.edu, and I'll send you a prize. And for everybody else, thank you for being here. We will see you next month for another edition of Facebook Live. Go Frogs!